Let's listen to a classic little ditty from Chinese history. This is a famous story from 800 years ago. Guo Ju lived with his mother, wife, and son, and he was known for being very filial to his mother. However, his family was poor, and Guo became super worried when he realized his family's food supply was unable to feed 4 people. So he took some time, he discussed with his wife, and they made this painful decision that the best thing to do is to bury their son alive, and that'd give him one less mouth to feed. You see, Guo felt that him and his wife could always have another child, but they could not really have his mother back if they lost her.
Did you do it?
Yes,
What did it cost?
everything.
So Guo starts digging, and he discovers this pile of gold. There's a note, and it said, the gold is a gift to him from heaven. And with the gold, Guo was able to provide for his whole family. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit shocked when I read this story. Like, historically, this tale is considered a moral story of virtue. It's got everything we love about virtue, right? Burying a child alive, being rewarded for it, and honoring your mother.
What are you doing?
I'm burying you.
I'm alive! I'm alive!
You're waking the neighbors!
No.
Shut up!
Imagine telling this knee slapper at a family gathering and everyone being like, whoa, what an amazing father. He just really honored his parents. Humanity's never really been that good to children, so these types of stories pop up. It's weird, right? Well, Guo Ju's story comes from a classic text that tells 24 different stories about a virtue known as xiao, or filial piety. Filial means it's relating to or due from a son or daughter. And piety, it means the quality of being religious or reverent. You see, filial piety is often generalized as just like being good and respectful to parents.
No, I'm serious, Mom. I've got next level respect for your struggle as immigrants to America.
That means a lot, son.
But it can almost also be described as a sort of like religious reverence that is due to parents from sons and daughters that is really prized as an ethical ideal here in East Asia. And since the early days of Confucius, filial piety has been deeply ingrained in Chinese society. And books like the 24 Exemplars, this 800-year-old book with all these stories, is adding to a long conversation on what type of fervor you should show for mom and dad.
It is the ultimate eternal tribute to your first love, your mom.
And these stories allude to or show this intense love and honor that children would give to their parents. Like one story where some guests show up at a house and there's a son out in the field working. So mom's like, I gotta take care of these guests. So she bites her finger, and she knows if she bites her finger, her son will feel pain in his heart and rush home and be like, Mom, what's wrong?
Johnny, that really hurts.
And then he comes in and everybody looks and she's like, I bit my finger. And they're like, what a filial child. And they all clap. And these stories, though, they sort of romanticize this idea of how good a child could be for his parents. One story I read is called He Fed Mosquitoes with His Blood. And it's basically what it sounds like. It's the story of this poor guy, Wu Ming, and his family couldn't afford mosquito nets. So he'd take his shirt off on summer nights and he'd sit next to his parents' beds and mosquitoes would bite him instead.
Just my type.
And these stories aren't like these crazy long things. They're just showing 1 or 2 acts of just immense love and devotion and honor towards parents, and sometimes loving them in a way that is maybe in our culture fairly disrespectful to other people. These stories morally are very different from what we believe in Western culture today, or really modern culture. Like there's a story of Ding Long, and his wife doesn't like his mother and basically dishonors Ding Long's parents. And Ding Long divorces his wife, and that shows how much filial piety he has. And it's kind of hard to imagine sitting around the water cooler and like telling this story and everybody being like, man, Ron's such a great guy, right? He divorced his wife over that time someone insulted his mom.
My first ex-wife's name is Tammy. My second ex-wife's name is Tammy. My mom's name is Tamara. She goes by Tammy.
But these moral systems, they place really high emphasis on parents and elders, and they often prioritize them over a spouse or children. So even though these might have jarring feelings attached, this cultural value is still strong and alive today. For instance, 2015, the National Judicial Exam in China posed the question to potential lawyers and judges: if a house fire happens, and a son saves his girlfriend instead of his mother, has he broken the law?
You got into Harvard Law?
What, like it's hard?
And it was simple. The Ministry of Justice just came out and said a man would be committing a crime of non-action if he chose his girlfriend over his mother. According to the law in China, a son is obligated to save his mother, not his girlfriend. And it's not a discussion, that's just how it is. It's filial piety. Your parents come first over some of the deepest relationships you have. And that can be over a girlfriend, but it can also be over a child or a spouse. Breaking news, Superman has just been arrested for failing to fulfill his filial obligation and watching his own father die. More at 11. So the list is long in what qualifies for being a filial child, and somewhat massive compared to the requirements for being a good parent, like in reciprocation. Confucius basically taught that children should obey when they're young, they shouldn't travel far from home when their parents are still alive, they should care for their parents as they age, and when your parents pass away, you're supposed to mourn for 3 years after their death, followed by lifelong ancestor worship.
We like to think of her as watching over us as we eat. Love you, Mom. Miss you. Miss you every day.
And in places like Taiwan, living out the virtue of filial piety involves unconditional obligations to mom and dad for life. That can mean being a good child, or it can mean deferring to what they say. Maybe they choose where you live or your career choice.
And it's insidious as well. Because when Asian parents want their kids to be doctors, helping people is like on the bottom of the list of reasons.
You care for them as you age, you give them money monthly, and you honor them after they die through ancestor worship. But this deeply rooted belief system has actually held much of East Asian society together for like thousands of years. It's created a stable social system. So there's some incredible perks for society. It keeps families together, people share generational wealth and property, but it has significant struggles that are brought up too, because children and parents, if they differ in goals, decisions, if a child wants a different job or a different belief, or maybe a different religion, they might be obligated to take on something they don't want to do. In modern times, most people take issue with stories like that of Guo Ju and the idea of burying a child to feed mom.
Close your eyes. Let the dirt just shower over you. This is your fault.
But there's still that question of how far you should go to prove you care for mom and dad in a culture like that. And in the East, there's daily pressure here to do that. Well, I knocked down my wall and now I have to compare and contrast. It's echoey in here and I don't know how long I can last. So what does Christianity say about parents and kids and responsibilities? Well, first, the biblical family unit is not centered around parents or elders, but actually the husband and wife in that relationship. Genesis 2:24 says, "Therefore a man leaves his father and his mother and cleaves to his wife, and they become one flesh." Currently, this portion of scripture is actually debated about, because the Hebrew word for leave can, in very rare circumstances, mean stay, support, or put in order. And it puts you in quite a hot spot when you have a Bible verse that can be read as leave and separate or stay and help. But Hebrew is one of those languages that as people study, there's many complex nuances. Historically though, we do know one thing. It's clear that Jewish people did live in close-knit communities, clans with deep family ties, and they'd even build onto the same house after marriage. So ancient Jewish people interpreting this verse didn't necessarily think that they had to like flee the nest when they got married.
On our honeymoon, Uncle Steve, our honeymoon. She bought her grandmama.
So we don't want to look at Genesis 2:24 as like marching orders from God to say, leave your family, you shouldn't stay with them ever. But Christianity says when you get married, you're your own family unit. And the other aspects of your life are prioritized around that. So scripture is clear that we need to honor our parents and that it's actually even immoral to not take care of our parents as they age. We're really supposed to value that relationship. We're not supposed to leave them in a sense of separation. But scripture is also clear that your spouse is your priority after marriage. Ephesians even calls husbands and wives to submit to each other. And the natural implication of that is that they're within an authority sphere of each other and not another member or unit of the family. It doesn't say husbands submit to your father-in-law, because that's not how God designed the family. Second, and this is a really hard one, The calling to follow God means to follow God even if your parents hate you for it. Like, if they hate you for doing it, you're still supposed to follow God first. So Jesus says something really profound when he says, "Do not think that I've come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I've come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a person's enemies will be those of his own household. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever does not take his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." You see, Jesus is a peacemaker, but the reality is that following Jesus demands putting God above any relationship and any authority. Jesus is upfront about that, though, and he said following him is going to create conflict. The reality is that Jesus knew to follow him was the only choice. He doesn't offer another route. Even if your parents disagree with your religious beliefs or convictions, a Christian is still supposed to honor God first. And it means being willing to even have a broken relationship with your parents in order to choose God. And this isn't easy. Ideally, we can have a relationship with God and a great one with our parents as well. But God says if that's not true, we're still commanded first to follow him. But here's the interesting thing. If Christianity is true, and you're thinking, how do I be a good filial daughter or filial son? Confucian thought actually argued that the filial child is responsible for advising parents and directing them away from moral unrighteousness. So it actually would be the responsibility of a filial child to tell them about Jesus. And third, the story of Guo Ju is haunting because someone's about to bury a child to feed a parent. But the question does remain, is it moral, even virtuous, to save a life through an immoral act? And child sacrifice is like a much larger conversation for, starter around the office here in the water cooler, but
important meeting with the gang. Let's bond.
A Christian worldview never allows us to do certain things, even if it's for the greater good. Rabbis actually picked out the top 3 things a person could never do, and they were idolatry, sexual immorality, and murder. In the Christian worldview, we would condemn the actions of Guo Ju. Even though he was really filial and he had great intentions towards his mom, Christianity would condemn that. After all, Romans says, "Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." Thank you for joining us here with Pilgrimage Films. Please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this video. Till next time.